My name is John Samuel Park. I'll be 27 years old next spring. Only my grandmother and my wife call me Donnie. My father, Robert, called me that when he was alive, too. I don't know why I was named John, and Samuel was my grandfather's name. My parents were born on the same day, and by a strange coincidence, died on the same day too, but 22 years apart. My mum, Evelyn, died when she was 22. I was only a few months old at the time, so I don't remember anything about her. No one ever talked about her. My dad died on a deserted stretch of motorway. His car went off the road and hit a tree. He was under the influence of alcohol, but not drunk. The police suggested he might have fallen asleep at the wheel, as there were no signs of braking. The exact reason why he ended up on that motorway was never determined. After my father died, I was raised by my grandparents. We lived in my grandmother's house until I was 8 years old. Then my father saved enough money and bought his own house. That's where I still live. It's a typical suburb where every third house looks like the neighboring one. Dad died 4 years ago when I was in college. He had a troubled soul. He rarely said, "I love you," but he always gave me a big hug when I came home from work. I can't remember a day that he didn't smell like whiskey, even though we didn't have a single bottle of alcohol in our house. Despite being a frequent visitor to his favorite pub, I don't think he had a drinking problem. His pictures still hang on the walls of the pub. He was a darts champion. Dad worked as a lorry driver and knew almost everyone in town. When he was ill, neighbors would bring him soup and potions. He didn't believe in painkillers, so he only took witches' potions, as he called them. But me, if I got sick, he always took me to the doctor for injections. I quickly learned not to complain. Dad loved rugby, and so did I. No matter how tough the game was, if I complained about an injury, he would quip, "Tell me what dress size you need, Joanne." I don't remember us ever having a party. Dad was a loner and had a very narrow circle of friends. It was unusual for him to date the same woman more than once. Attempts to get him dates were futile. When my father died, my grandmother commissioned a beautiful headstone, Robert Pickwick, Evelyn Pack, loving parents of John Samuel Pack. I had never been to my mother's grave until we buried my father. I have a degree in civil engineering. I work for the city on road improvement projects. I never planned to work in this field, but was inspired by a few presentations my sophomore year of college. In my third year, I did an internship with the city and got lucky, just as one of the old employees was retiring when I graduated. In high school, I married my high school sweetheart, Marianne. We have a 4-month-old son whom we named Robert Samuel. Marianne and I went to the same school and were always in the same company. I blew it by cheating on her with a girl who wouldn't say no to anyone. There were a lot of tears, but as I left for college and Marianne stayed in town, we gradually drifted apart. We would say hello when we happened to meet each other on holidays. After graduation, I came home, and a week later Marianne showed up on my front porch. She said, "I want to see if there's anything left between us." We began to slowly rebuild our relationship. I learned that Marianne had her own house in town. Her father had accepted a job a few hours away, and her parents had moved shortly after she graduated. Marianne worked as a bookkeeper at a clothing shop downtown. After a few dates, it was clear that there was still chemistry between us. Our relationship lasted less than 6 months before I proposed. We waited a few years before having a child. Marianne worked until 10 days before giving birth. I'm a typical 280-pound guy, not in the best shape. Marianne is petite, just over 5 feet tall and barely 100 pounds. As her delivery date approached, she looked like a balloon with legs. She hated the look and couldn't understand how I could love her when she was so swollen. I didn't know how to reassure her. My engineering degree didn't prepare me for this. Robert Samuel wraps his little hand around my finger. I would do anything for him. Marianne really loves being a mother. We are already planning to expand our family as soon as Robert turns 1 year old. I earn enough to provide for our family. We have a young boy named Charlie living next door to us who seems to always be hanging around our house. He just graduated from high school and works part-time wherever he can. He's always asking if we need anything done. He seems a little strange to me. He's a very big guy. The week before Christmas, our marriage went through a major crisis. When I got home, I found Marianne crying on the couch. "I'm so sorry, Johnny, I didn't mean for this to happen," she kept repeating. I asked, "Marianne, what are you sorry about? What happened?" She, sobbing, told me that as she was unloading groceries, one of the bags ripped. Charlie was there and started to help her pack, even though she said she could do it herself. He carried some bags into the kitchen, and when she turned her back to him, he pinned her against the countertop. He did the same thing you did. I think he was following us.
I'm just numb, she said.
I asked, was it against your will? She didn't answer, just shook her head. So now that you're scared, you just let strangers do whatever they want to you?
I asked. No, it wasn't like that.
I just didn't know what to do.
I was numb, she replied.
And screaming, kicking, scratching?
I asked. Johnny, it was a mistake.
I should have done all of that.
I love you, she said.
How long did it last?
I asked. It wasn't long.
Robert started crying, and I burst out, pushed Charlie away and locked myself in the bathroom.
I've probably washed 10 times since then, she replied.
I wish our marriage didn't cry.
Maybe he would have been saved, I said.
I'm going to Grandma's for a few days, Marianne said.
No, don't go. I need you, I begged.
But her tears and pleas didn't stop me. I felt ready to punch through the wall. Nothing in my life had ever scared me so much. At rugby practice, I told my friends what was bothering me. They patted my shoulder and tried to cheer me up, but I was in pain. A few days later, before a game, a few blokes took me aside.
John, Charlie's down.
Where is this world going? He got beat up while he was lying down. The blokes kicked him about 100 times with steel boots.
He's in the hospital now, they said.
You guys are the best, I replied. After the game, I drove home. Marian started crying and begging, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake. I love you, please don't go. I said, I'm not ready to discuss this. I took a shotgun cartridge, wrote Charlie on it, and put it in my pocket. I found Charlie's room in the hospital. He had tried to protect his valuables with both hands during the attack, but they couldn't withstand the blows of the rugby player's steel boots. Both hands were in plaster, and he had lots of tubes connected to him. When he saw me, his blood pressure started to rise, reflecting his growing fear. I showed him the cartridge. Charlie, I'm not going to hurt you today. See your name on this cartridge? If I ever find out you even thought about Marianne, your mouth will be full of what's inside that thing. Do I make myself clear enough? Charlie nodded several times. His blood pressure was alarming as I left the ward. I went to the pub to drown my sorrow. Gran scolded me when I came to her. Johnny, open your heart. Give her a chance. Don't wait too long, please. I replied, I need a few more days, Grandma. I hugged her and went to bed. In the morning, I found Grandma in the kitchen with a box of tissues. She was looking at a picture of my father. She seemed to have been up all night. Are you okay, Grandma? I asked. The holidays are a hard time. Have you thought about what I said? She asked. Yes, I'm not ready yet, I replied. In the evening, I went to the pub again, listened to the lecture, and went back to my grandmother's house. I woke up on Christmas Eve and found Grandma in the kitchen again. She looked upset. The box of tissues was empty, and she was looking at a picture of my father. She seemed to be mumbling something, but I couldn't make out what. Good morning, Grandma. Is something wrong? I asked. Johnny, have you made up your mind? She asked. Not yet, I replied. Open your heart, Johnny. It was a mistake, maybe a big one, but a mistake nonetheless. Do you need me to tell you about your big mistakes? How is this different from you and that girl at school? She said. I just hope you don't wait too long. You're just as stubborn as your father, she added. Grandma, we're married now. Things are different, I replied. At that time Marianne was already wearing your wedding ring. Let me tell you, things are different now. You have to deal with the sting of betrayal. When it involved her feelings, it wasn't a big deal, but now that it involves you, it's different, isn't it? Don't wait too long, Johnny, she said and cried again. I kissed her forehead and left. I found myself in the pub around supper time. There weren't many people there. I felt depressed. God, how I miss Marianne and little Robert, I thought. I seemed to have already decided what to do. I took another sip of whiskey. I knew alcohol wasn't the answer, but I was pretty sure milk and water wouldn't help either. Hey mate, someone held out a hand. You look the way I feel. I'm Bobby. I've been watching you for a while. Mind if I join you? He said. I looked up and saw a guy about my age, maybe a little younger, with blank eyes and an absent look. He smelled faintly of whiskey. Of course I didn't notice you, I said and shook his hand. Let me guess, is your wife cheating? He asked. I nodded. Are there people here, Johnny? Christmas should be spent with family, he said. That's true. I'm John, but I never knew my mum. She died when I was a baby, and my dad died 4 years ago. What about you, Bobby? I asked. Well, if you're John, I'll be Robert. Both my parents are alive. I'm alive until I figure out how to raise this baby, Johnny.
I found out a few months ago, he said. I'm John.
Last week my girlfriend made a mistake at a party and cheated on me. She felt guilty and told me everything a few days later. What about you?
I asked.
My neighbor made a move on her and she didn't stop him.
She didn't handle it that night, he replied.
Let me guess, I'm so sorry, it was a mistake, I love you?
I asked.
Yeah, all of those things. They probably have a script they all follow, he said.
I was cruel.
I made her tell me every detail.
She was in shreds.
I didn't give up, I told her I'd probably divorce her, he continued.
I understand your point.
I haven't filed for divorce yet, but I'm going crazy thinking about it.
I should have calmed down, but I couldn't.
Swallowing that last drop of pride is what hurts the most, I said. I'm telling you, Johnny, she had tears in her eyes. She worked here as a waitress, and guys were always hitting on her. I still carry her picture, he said. He pulled his wallet out of his back pocket and pulled out the crumpled photo. That was a couple of years ago. Still my favorite, he said. You never made up with her?
I asked. No, I was too stubborn.
She made a mistake and I would have forgiven her, but I took too long. She left me a note and left.